obviously you have to get through primary first.
Yes.
What distinguishes you, do you believe, from others who are running?
I have run before. I ran for state senate in 2010. That was a very interesting experience. It was my first time running. You learn a lot. You learn a lot about yourself. You learn how some things that might be uncomfortable you just have to deal with. I mean, going up to people and saying hello to them when they're in line for funnel cake at the farm show. You have to do it. Hey, how you doing? I'm Matt Connolly, running for Senate, that kind of thing. Knocking on doors. That summer in 2010, I knocked on 5,000 doors. These people are not expecting you, but you have the list of their names, who they are, their ages, and how often they vote, and their party affiliation. And you knock on the door, you introduce yourself, you give them your literature, and that sort of thing. But after a while, like these days, when I go somewhere, I'm like, who should I be talking to? Who should I be talking to? Should I give this guy my card? Kind of thing. Whereas new candidates, they're still on that I don't want to bother people mentality, and it takes a little while to get out of that. So the experience of running before is one of the reasons.
Okay.
I'm the only person who's a business owner. Or has owned or run businesses. The other two guys have not.
Okay, that's
they
point.
both. I mean, I sign the front of the check so other people can sign the back of the check.
But you know how to balance a spreadsheet, which obviously
well, sure, and
you
I know
how
that
to deal with healthcare costs and all of that.
Yes, I've had a lot of employees on my race teams, and in other businesses that I've had, I've developed a lot of real estate. You got to know how to project costs. You know how to keep that buffer for things. The way the government operates now financially is it's blatantly. You don't want to say illegal, but it's just foolish. It's so. The words have been said; they're almost cliches, but it's not sustainable. It's all of those things. We are in a trajectory of debt a trajectory of debt that when we go down the other side.
Well, and they keep thinking, oh, we'll just raise the debt ceiling, raise the debt ceiling, raise the debt. I always liken it to if your house backs up with septic and sewage, you don't raise your ceiling in your house, you actually try to get the septic out of your house.
Right.
And
but that's not pleasant.
But no, that's not pleasant. It actually requires work. The government just raises the ceiling.
I know. The lack of political will in Washington is really astounding. I mean, what they exist by on a day-to-day basis. First of all, the Obama administration has become brilliant at simply managing by crisis. Everything is a crisis, crisis, crisis. We can't look down the road. We've got to look at right here because right now it's really bad. Why is Vladimir Putin cleaning our clock, foreign policy-wise? Because he's looking at 15, 20 years down the road. He doesn't care if the United States throws some sanctions on some of his generals. Oh, big deal. He's looking at reassembling the old Soviet Union. And our president, Barack Obama, doesn't understand why he's not being respected. He's said about red lines in Syria, this kind of...
The red line with the crayon that he drew,
right.
that one?
He's never done anything. Vladimir Putin can look at Obama and say, this guy's an absolute amateur. He's an egomaniac amateur. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's never run anything in his life. He thinks he's entitled to the position. And he waited till after the Olympics. I mean, Vladimir is an incredible strategist.
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And what's also interesting is that the Obama administration has figured out that if you have enough chaos out there, nobody in the public can focus on any one area of your incompetency. And there's so much out there that is a catastrophe that we don't know what to focus upon.
That is a brilliant way of looking at it. They do operate by chaos because if you don't know what's going on, then you really don't know what exactly to complain about. But what's interesting is they have such a complicit media. And that's going to be the biggest challenge. I know in my campaign it's going to be a challenge.
That's what I wanted to ask
you.
Exactly. To localize it, do you believe the media is going to be complicit
locally? They might be okay, but when
because your district is more heavily Democrat to Republican.
It is.
Okay.
The Democrats don't always vote that way. As a matter of fact, I've met so many of them say, well, we're Democrats, but believe me, that doesn't mean a thing. So, okay, you take that as it is. According to the Charlie Cook report, it's like a +4 Democrat. And that's what it was the last presidential election. Now, this is not a presidential election. If Governor Corbett does the property tax reform, which I believe he will, it's going to take a lot of the wind out of the sails for whoever the Democratic nominee is.
Absolutely.
And he'll be a lot more popular, and it's going to depress the Democratic vote even more. So I think with that, it'll be a much more straightforward race.
Well, and I know also in Pennsylvania, certainly in your district, there are a lot of hunters, a lot of believers in the Second Amendment, a lot of people who hold their Bibles and their guns dear, Republican or Democrat. And one of the things also that Congressman Cartwright talked about on my show was wanting to limit the amount of ammo that people can purchase, which, again, as a military wife and married to a hunter and a hunter myself,
That's like saying you have a Corvette you drive. but you'd only put so much gas in it. Or your pedal can only go down this far. People who are responsible, hunters, whatever, they're going to be responsible where they got a 5-bullet clip or larger than that, okay? When you have politicians talking about limiting something as inherent in our country as the Second Amendment, it's the Second Amendment. It's not the first, which is freedom of speech, and it's not the 28th, which is the last one. It's the Second Amendment. They knew how important citizens being armed is. Sure. You know, when Thomas Jefferson said it best, when the government fears its people, there is freedom. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. And we are on that path to people fearing the government. Look at the IRS scandal. Look at what Lois Lerner did.
Oh, yes. Let's look at that. Let's talk about that a bit.
And look, I got audited for the first time in 2010. I ran for state senate as a Republican, and I joined the Tea Party. Next thing I know, I got a letter. They were in my office for 5 days. I mean, it was uncomfortable. The biggest telling moment, they asked me to cover the McCain-Palin sign I had in my office, the bumper sticker on my file cabinet.
Really?
She said it was offensive. I thought to myself, and I didn't think anything of it. I was like, okay.
But now, in retrospect, knowing what the IRS was doing, isn't that fascinating?
And the reason for the audit was, we think you spent too much on tires. I kid you not. Too much on tires. I spent $90,000 on race.
The guy that has the race car business spent too much on tires.
Yeah, well, $50,000 of that was for one race, the 24 Hours of Daytona, which is a 24-hour race. Yeah. A set of tires lasts about 50 miles. So believe me, and they're over $2,000. Sure, no, it's and I just thought, wow, well, I guess I didn't explain it to him well enough. And then, like I said, when it came out about the IRS, I thought, okay, now I get it. And that was when I began to fear my government. But I'm not a guy who complains, and I don't go down easy. So I said, I'm going to run for office again.
I like it. I always say, don't complain about it, do something about it. That's how I close the show every time.
And while we still have the freedom to do that, and while people are still, there is a silver lining to a lot of things in this world. And I believe there's a silver lining to Obama's reelection. Because anyone else could have killed it, like John McCain. If he had won, he'd have killed us with 1,000 paper cuts. Obama's running at us with a knife.
Just stabbing us
right in the chest. Okay, so that's waking people up. Most people think that, like you and I probably did. I know how I did when we were younger. Okay, government's in a box somewhere. It's sort of at the fringes. It's there to protect us, not run our lives. There's checks and balances. Everything's fine. The bad ones, they're corrupt. They get either exposed or voted out. The good ones stay in or whatever. Now I'm realizing the government is getting everywhere. The 10th Amendment to the Constitution says any power not given to the federal government belongs to the states.
Yes.
That was trampled on starting with Woodrow Wilson. Big time. Now it's almost non-existent. Now they're surprised when the states opt out of Obamacare. And the other silver lining of the Supreme Court decision was that they can opt out but not be penalized with Medicaid funds. They can't be withheld. The other silver lining with Obama being reelected is if Romney had come in and repealed Obamacare and cut taxes and regulation, and this country starts taking off, everyone would have said, well, you know what, Obama planted the seeds and Romney just took that harvest, didn't he? Obama needed another chance. But because Obama now owns it, he's used up all of his blame George Bush cards.
They're long gone. There's still a couple people that try to use that excuse, but really, you got to be pretty pathetic
they don't even
to
believe
fall
it.
for
They don't even believe it. So all of those things, and then with with Hillary Care, for example, 1993, Clinton gets in 92. Hillary's, she's already taken control. They asked her, will you be able to keep your doctor and keep your plan? And she said, well, probably not. Now, we had a Democratic president. Democrats controlled the Senate and the House. The Senate and House didn't even take it up for a vote. Hillary Care died before it ever got voted on. It died a very quick and obvious death, never to be brought up again. So Obama resurrects Hillary Care in the form of Obamacare. But he makes one...
Far worse, yeah.
Well, he makes one brilliant decision. I'm just going to lie about it.
Sure.
Can you keep your doctor plan?
Sure,
yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
He looked in the camera. Yeah, period. End of story. Period, end of story. But
now it's a semicolon, apparently.
Well, if. There was the big if.
That you didn't hear, yeah. For weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months.
When it's the political lie of the year, and now if it was so good, why is it so long being implemented? If it's so good for us, why are they delaying the employer mandate?
Right.
Come on, why are you keeping this from me? Why are you doing that? We all know why. So anyway, so the silver lining is it's making people wake up. And we had a 6.2 million policies canceled, okay? Average 3 people on a policy. Okay? That's 18 million people lost their health care. They're ecstatic that 7 to 8 million people have signed up, which doesn't mean they've paid, which doesn't mean that they weren't the people who lost their health care in the beginning. So it is a huge failure, and then when the insurance companies are going to start giving out their estimates for 2015 policy costs, it's going to be even higher. So that's going to be the big wake-up call that's going to make people pay attention.
Well, I think the other thing that's making people pay attention to your earlier point when you talk about Vladimir Putin and these other countries and what he's trying to do with his power grab at this time while we have a weak leader in place. Obama's dismantling the United States military. We're going back to pre-World War II levels. Now, I'm not saying there was not any fat that could have been trimmed,
You're right.
but my goodness, it's frightening to think what's happening.
Well, in the debate we had last night, that was one of the questions. What do you think about, exactly what you said, bringing it back to pre-World War II levels? I think there's a lot of fat there, and I think the technology that we have is replacing a lot of boots on the ground and that kind of manpower.
Sure.
Okay. But the biggest problem is we have a commander-in-chief who does not even know how to use what we have. We could make a leaner, meaner army with fewer people that are at risk, that kind of stuff, and do a lot more. But he doesn't even have the guts, the will, the intelligence, or the
intestinal fortitude. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think. Gumption is probably the best word.
Yeah.
To even stand up to some guy in Syria. I mean, come on. Putin's there. He's on the phone with him for an hour and a half. It should have been a 90-second phone call, not a 90-minute phone call, and then it should have been followed with action. But he can't do it.
So again, going back to your race and localizing it a bit, we've talked about the fact that clearly the person holding this seat now, who you will be running against in the general election after winning the Republican nomination, is lockstep with Obama. Right. Why should the people in the 17th district to localize vote for you instead of Congressman Cartwright?
Well, they didn't know who he was when they elected him last time. He had no record. He had advertisements. He had name recognition from the law firm. He was a Democrat. Okay, that's all he needs to know. The voter, that's all they need to know. Now they're like, wait a minute, he is not pro-life after all. I thought he was. They realize that he says Obamacare didn't go far enough, and Obamacare is already hurting people. It's in the high 20s, low 30s as far as approval of Obamacare. Obama's at his lowest ever, and that's not even by registered voters. That's just by 1,000 random people.
Sure.
Registered voters tend to be a lot more critical of the incumbent. I think all those things, you add them up, means that the voters are going to look at him very differently now than they did in 2012.
Okay. If people want to learn more about you, where do they go?
Well, website, mattconnollyforcongress.com.
Okay. And all of your positions,
my positions,
and
Connolly is spelled C-O-N-N-O-L-L-Y. It's important.
2 O's, 2
Two
N's,
2
2
L's,
L's.
a C
Love
and a Y.
it.
There you go.
Love it.
All my positions, I have position papers. There's also a lot of videos. I mean, all my years being on TV and racing, there's a 15-minute documentary about me racing. There's a bunch of clips from Speed Vision and other things of me racing, which is it's just there just to see what it's all about.
Oh, absolutely. I think that'll be great though to see.
Fun, yeah.
I mean, really. I mean, you certainly don't lack guts, which is kind of a refreshing thing for somebody who's going to be running for an office such as this.
The thing about running for office is you shouldn't need it. You should want to do it for the right reasons, but you shouldn't need it to make you a complete person. Okay. Some people feel, well, they have to be addressed as congressman or senator, or they'll have the word honorable in front of their name, and of course that only means that you got elected. No, that's not me. Everyone's going to call me Matt in the office. They're not going to call me congressman or Mr. Connolly or anything like that. It's going to be Matt, because we're all in this together, and that's just the way it is. So you need people who come from the real world, who really benefit from the American dream, and I truly did. I mean, my campaign slogan is Renew the American Dream, because it's being lost. There's a whole generation of kids who don't really know what it is. It's almost like a historical thing, but it's not lost. The parents are still there.
We just need to get it back.
We need to renew it.
Right, and it's not going to be handed to us. We have to fight for it because, as you reminded us early when we started, we were given a republic, as Benjamin Franklin said, and it's our job to keep that republic, isn't it?
That's right.
Is there anything else as we close? We have a few seconds left that you'd like to say to the people directly about yourself.
Well, I'm a guy, 48 years old. I've never held office before. I'm doing this because I think this is still the greatest country ever. It's a little on the downside now. We can bring it back. It takes people with conservative values who understand that your money is better in your pocket and the government is there to protect us and not to run our lives.
Well said. Well, Matt Connolly, what a pleasure meeting you.
Very
Thank
nice
you so much for coming on the show. Please come back after you win the primary.
I will.
Yes, and remember, folks, when you look around and you don't like what you see, don't complain about it. Be like Matt Connolly. Do something about it. Thank you for watching.